Now, finally, Washington's Department of Children, Youth, and Families has agreed to a permanent injunction that will bar state officials from forcing foster parents in the state to embrace gender ideology. Kind of sensing a theme here on the day for children in their care. A federal district judge ruled last month, and we reported on this, that requiring them to kind of socially transition children in their care is a violation of the First Amendment. Say you've got a Christian couple, like in this case, it was Shane and Jennifer DeGross of Tacoma, who'd been longtime foster parents about 9 years before then the state of Washington started forcing foster families to embrace this gender ideology. And they said, wait a minute, this goes against our, religious freedom. Would not want to embrace that. If we get a foster child in our care who is maybe questioning gender or whatever, we're not going to embrace that and say, yeah, you're probably in the wrong body, and let's get you to some doctors and let's move ahead with this transition while you're in our care. They refused to embrace it, and they ended up joining along with Alliance Defending Freedom as their legal counsel in pushing back on this policy. And again, they've won. And now, in fact, they have forced the Department of Children, Youth, and Families to rewrite the Washington Administrative Code that has been for several years now forcing foster parents to embrace this gender ideology. Otherwise, you can't be a foster parent in the state, or you can only take kids that are, babies, toddlers. But boy, once they're 5 and they might start questioning their gender identity, you can't have those kids in your care. I spoke briefly today with ADF's senior counsel who represented this family. He told me that, they were merely asking to be treated the same as any other family without having to compromise their core beliefs. And so this is a huge victory for ADF and this family. And then I spoke to Representative Travis Couture, Republican from Allen. He's been sharply critical of DCYF, not only over the foster care system, but other issues with DCYF, including the Keeping Families Together Act, which critics blame, including Representative Couture, for the sharp increase in child deaths and critical incidents where children are left to languish in the care of their drug addicted parents instead of removing them and requiring their parents to, get clean and sober before they get their kids back. So I spoke with him today specifically about this win for this foster family and DCYF having to amend their policy. And this is part of the conversation I had today with Representative Couture.
The state of Washington is staring down the barrel of over $2 billion in tort liability. And what that means is lawsuits against the state of Washington that the state of Washington lost. And when you look deeper into those lawsuits, the majority of them revolve around the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. They're losing tons of lawsuits because they simply don't fix the problems. They simply violate people's rights, and they're not doing the right things. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. And in this case, where they're asking foster families, actually not even asking them, they're by the force of government, like a gun to your head, telling you that you will affirm the pronouns or you can't be a foster parent. Absolutely insane and unconstitutional. I'm glad they lost it. That's an important thing that we should be happy that happened, but sad that it ever occurred. We have a radical, ideological state agency who is less interested in making foster care better and making foster parents whole and trying to help them out, and more interested into trying to force feed their radical gender ideology.
Now, DCYF did send me a statement midday today. I want to put that up about this settlement in particular. Part of what they sent me said the settlement agreement respects the religious beliefs of foster parents while ensuring LGBTQIA plus youth are placed in an environment that is safe and supports their well-being. That attributed to DCYF Secretary Tana Sen. And one of the key points of the settlement does require them to update their foster care licensing rules. Foster parents will not be required to use words that conflict with their sincerely held religious beliefs as a condition of being licensed. Again, that's from DCYF in relationship to this settlement agreement. Also important to note here that DCYF has to pay $250,000 in legal fees to Alliance Defending Freedom in this case. So yet another big payout of taxpayer money for an agency that has been sued and lost repeatedly in recent years, and yet tort reform efforts were rebuffed again this year during the 2026 legislative session. So another $250,000 payout, taxpayer funded payout for DCYF for their policies, which are repeatedly getting slapped down in the courts. So that's it for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I hope you're able to have a little bit of downtime, maybe get to enjoy a 3-day weekend, some time with family. And thank you again for all those families who've sacrificed. I know many folks that watch our podcast serve and protect in our armed forces, and certainly have had family members who have served and protect and potentially lost their lives over the years. So thank you. Thank you for that sacrifice and for what you do every day to protect our freedoms. I hope you'll have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. Check out the Center Square Washington page, and we'll see you next week.